thanks all for coming out to our panel. The Tony Hawk's Pro Skater guys, which is us. We'll just kind of do a little quick intro to start with, so you guys can know our background and what we did in the game and so forth. Nolan, you want to start off?
Sure. I was a character artist. I didn't start actually until Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, but I worked on all the Tony Hawks until 9. But I was character artist and then became art director. And then that was what I did on Tony Hawk.
What are you doing now, Nolan?
Right now I'm working on a kind of well, not kind of, it's a mobile MOBA type game. It's got a little action, some good stuff there. It's a place called Plague Geek. That's where I work now. While I was at Neversoft, I worked on Tony Hawk, and then moved on to Guitar Hero as well, and then making all sorts of other games. That's about it.
How many years you been in the industry, Nolan?
Too long. It's been like almost 30 years, actually, which is kind of crazy. Yeah, I remember working on, actually I made this really terrible game called Evil Knievel. And I helped this one guy do it. I think he got 19%. It was pretty cool. So you should look it up. I think it's one of the worst games ever.
All right, Darren.
Yeah, I'm Darren Thorne. I worked on the first Tony and worked all the way at Neversoft until Proving Ground. And I'm retired now and don't really do video games anymore, just work on my house. And I play tennis and just kind of hang out,
In Alaska.
In Alaska in the summer and California in the winter. I miss part of it, but I don't miss all the meetings and I don't miss all the deadlines. So, yeah.
Rausch. Yeah.
Hi, my name's Chris Rausch. I'm one of the original designers of the franchise. Worked on levels and music, game mechanics, and all kinds of fun stuff. I started on Tony Hawk 1, worked all the way up through just Wasteland, which I had left by that time to start my own company called Supervillain Studios. We kept working on a few games there. These days, I'm a studio director for a company called Nicholas. We focus a lot on retro games on Switch and PlayStation 5, all kinds of fun stuff. I've been in games just a little longer than you have.
Yeah.
Like 35 years or 33 years or something like that. And I don't have the luxury of retiring just yet, which is a journey.
And even though I'm sure Chris would agree, but making video games that long, still making the exact same way. But still get the same struggles and
Yes.
fun stuff.
All right, I'm Ralph D'Amato. I was a producer at Neversoft. I worked on the first 8 Tony Hawks, so Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 to Project 8. Worked a lot on the soundtracks with, I think we have like 3/5 of the soundtrack team up here, myself, Chris, and Nolan, and then there were 2 other folks. Went to work for Tony for 4 years for a bit, then just kind of bounced around producing lots of different apps here and there. Then this guy challenged me to, when I was working on a game with him, to make a documentary about our experience at Neversoft and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, and so I produced Pretending I'm a Superman, the Tony Hawk video game story. Check it out, it's on YouTube for free. And now working on a brand new skateboarding game called Cheapskate with another fellow Neversoft coworker. We just kind of wanted to make something new, non-corporate, a little bit, kind of on the indie, not a little bit, definitely on the indie side, punk rock kind of style, and bringing fans along for the ride as we're developing, showing all of our bad spots that we have and everything, showing everything to the fans. Yeah, warts and all, exactly, and have a gigantic checklist of all the things that we want to do. So that's kind of my new goal, is to create a new skateboard franchise. Yeah, and you should have gotten a postcard on your seat, and at the end, got some Steam keys. It's on Steam that we'll give you guys as well. So that's what I've been doing. How many of you guys were here last year for the? So we have some. Okay. Yeah, last year we ran into an issue with going way over on the Q&A. So what we'll do is at first I was like, well, maybe we should just start Q&A, but that doesn't really break the ice so much. So I wanted to, we wanted to kind of describe what making video games back in the day was like, back taking a time machine to 1999, and what we were using to make this new franchise, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, from different angles. So from the design standpoint, Chris, like what was what major hardware platform were you working with, and software? What kind of things how primitive were things?
For me, the big thing, so I came from a company called Virgin Interactive to go to Neversoft. And back at Virgin, we were still using engines that took ages to compile. So every time you made a change to something, I was working on a baseball game at one point. If I changed one thing about a sprite, I would have to go in and compile and wait for 5-10 minutes, whatever it was, in between. So like, iterating on something was really difficult and time consuming. And the first thing that was put in front of me when I went to Neversoft was a chipped PlayStation with a Game Shark on the back. And Mick West, the technical, can you not hear me? The technical partner at Neversoft had devised an engine that used the Game Shark to go right through, and compiling was seconds. So the ability to make all those games and iterate on those levels and figure out, is this fun, is this not, was now minutes instead of hours. And that was kind of the most critical thing, I think, in my experience, that was a big deal.
Yeah, and I think part of that also was back then the tools the tools from PlayStation, they were gigantic and they were super expensive, and so it was not at that time we could not, the cost of it was too much. So this system that Mick created was rather genius, even though it's a little bit on the iffy side with legalities and so forth. But it enabled us to really push the team, the designers and artists, to be able to get stuff in the game and see what it's like right away. So that was.
Do you want to explain what a Game Shark was?
What a Game Shark was?
Yeah, some people might not know what
device.
that is.
Yeah,
it was a little dongle cheat device that you would stick in the back of your PlayStation, and you could do different.
You'd punch codes into it.
Yeah,
and you
and
had
you could-
cheats that were unintended. So it was kind of like a third-party bypass dongle thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't made for development though, right? It was
No, it was definitely not a development
Not
tool.
for development.
No.
It was
made
for
for players,
Yeah, it was for
yeah.
players, and
Yeah.
Sony and any platform that was that had one. That platform maker was always suing them to try to get it off the market.
Yeah, Neversoft was a very big customer of theirs, so I bought quite a few those, and special PlayStations shipped, whatever.
And that just kind of shows, not to get too deep in it, but that's like what Neversoft was always trying to do, is we were always trying to find ways to make things better so that we could develop our platform for the game that much better, and being able to iterate on a whole bunch of stuff. Because we had, as Rausch said, we had a lot of cool tools that were coming from different places where it would take forever just to see your shit in game, right? And you get here and you're like, whoa, I can see this in like short amount of time. So it allowed us to iterate and be able to just like make it even better, because we didn't have to sit around. I used to work in this place before I started Neversoft, and we had these kind of jerk programmers, and you had to kind of be their friends.
Yeah, you had to go through
to be like, oh, well, we'll build your stuff so you can see it. You're like, okay. And they're like, come back in a half hour. And you're just like, all right. And then you come back, and so that was like part of what was, when I came to Neversoft, it was just like, wow, the amount of tools and like how everybody wanted to kind of, have this super cool new tool. And, obviously Tony Hawk was awesome. And so it was just like, you just kind of got that sense that, hey, we're all in this together. We're just trying to make the best thing possible.
Yeah.
That kind of goes to that hardware part of it.
Yeah, it kind of purified the whole team. Like when I worked at Nova Logic before I worked at Neversoft, and that was a military simulator game company, and it was all PC stuff. But like Nolan says, everything I wanted to see in the game, I had to kind of semi-beg the programmer boss of the game to let me see it. And it would just make it impossible to improve, micro-improve stuff. You would do it in 3D Studio, the software we would use to make our meshes and stuff. You do it in there, but it wasn't the same as seeing it live. When I got to Neversoft and I had my own little PlayStation, little cheap, basic PlayStation that I could click a button and see my work instantly, I was able to improve stuff so quickly that, all of us could just immediately see, oh, that's kind of lame, let me fix that. And it just made everything better and quicker, for sure.
And then Activision saw a new game every year.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, we were
shot
under-
ourselves in the
yeah.
foot, sort
Their
of.
shareholders saw a new game every year.
Yeah, I mean, we were bound by about a 9-month dev cycle, because the
Yeah.
last 3 months you're in testing, and then you submit it to Sony and Microsoft and all of the folks. So it was a crunch, it was a crunch completely from start to finish. Well, maybe not as much at the very beginning, but middle and end, we did this thing called hardcore hours, which basically meant whatever time you came in the office in the AM, you could leave in the PM at a minimum. But if you came in at 8 a.m. and left at 8 p.m., be sure that someone's going to say, "You're leaving already?" So there were, but we were all really passionate about the game. Hardware pieces, the platforms we were working on were like Pentium 2 with 650 megs of RAM. These kind of ancient. There was no YouTube that you can go and get videos of. You go on YouTube right now, you could type in any skateboard trick, and you're going to see dozens and dozens and dozens of pieces of reference material. That didn't exist. I can talk from a production standpoint. There are tons and tons of different production tools out there, project management tools. I had Word and Excel, and that's how we did every project. That's how we planned every project. That's how we scheduled every project, was writing everything down in a gigantic Excel list, working with the guys that are going to be doing all of the assets and all of the design, figuring out times, and then spreadsheeting, making a gigantic waterfall. We didn't have Jira or any of the tools that are out right now.
Anything that might organize anyone in that building, that didn't exist.
Yeah, so you were really dependent. Everybody was dependent on organizing themselves, and every Friday we had micro deadlines every week. Every Friday we'd have to get a build over to Activision so they could see what our progress was. And it wasn't as big of a deal at the first Tony Hawk, because when we started that game, it wasn't meant to be this big hit. It was, hopefully they make their money back. There wasn't a big budget for the game. And so we were flying under the radar pretty much, and we were able to do what we wanted to do. But then once that demo came out, the Jam Pack demo and the Pizza Hut demo, and it kind of blew up, that's when Activision decided to buy Neversoft, and we were kind of getting keen to the fact that this might be something really cool. And I mean, honestly, for me, I just wanted to keep working so we could make another game. Like, I hope it does good enough that we can make another game. And that's what we were all kind of targeting. But everybody was, since we had that Friday deadline, everyone was super reliant on each other to make sure they didn't break the build.
And smaller team helped.
Yeah,
So
smaller
definitely
team helped. But the
small
first team, there was like 13 of us full time on it. Project 8, the last team there were about 300 people on it that I worked. That was the last one I worked on. I know it even grew after that.
Yeah, it was huge.
Yeah.
And then we split to do Guitar Hero, so some of the people for Proving Ground went over to Guitar Hero, and some did both, but by that time it had become a completely different process because it was hundreds of people on each title.
Yeah. I want to just go back to what we were talking about, Ralph, when we got our builds on Friday, what we had to do from we'd have a courier come, right? To send that, to ship that build over to Tony or to Activision.
We didn't have an internet connection that would, that was also part of the difficulty. We were burning DVDs at single speed, so to do a burn, it would take 4 hours. So you'd be sitting there 3-4 hours to do a burn. And then when you get that burn done, I would literally put caution tape around the burn machine so no one walked by it, because I didn't want any vibrations to bump it, and then it screws it up, and at 2 o'clock in the morning I got to start it over again. And then when that was done, you'd have to call the courier to come grab that DVD or CD at first and bring it over to Activision at 3 o'clock in the morning for whenever it was. So we didn't have a lot of the tools that we have today that. In some cases, I think make things seem a bit easier, but I think without the core of what we were doing back in the day, and that responsibility and knowing that at any moment we had a thing called the jar of shame. And if you did anything to break the build, if you did anything stupid in the office that, even like reporting something wrong with your computer, I come over and you just had to reboot it. You have to put $1 in the jar shape.
If you did something stupid that wasn't fun.
Yeah.
If it was stupid
Your mouse,
and fun,
you didn't connect your mouse and
You
it's not
connect your
working, and I
mouse.
connected it,
Or,
works.
yes.
Yeah.
Or I had one case where one kid's like, I can't get my computer to work. There's nothing happening. I'm like, I do it. Your monitor's off.
Yeah. That's $1 to jar
I'm really
shape.
tired, man. It was a long.
That one was $2.
So and the jar was on Mick's desk for the most part. Mick is the technical director. He was so Neversoft, founded by JCM, which is Joel, Mick, and Chris, or Joel, Chris, and Mick. And Mick was really the genius behind the Tony Hawk series. I don't think without Mick, we really wouldn't have had the game that we had. He was the guy that built the engine, did all the physics, anytime there was any other programmer that had an issue, they would go to Mick, and Mick would help fix it. He wanted them to obviously do it, and I know there are times where I'm like, Mick, just fix it. Like, it's 2:00 in the morning, just fix it. But the jar was on his desk, and you'd have to go and see Mick. And Mick was a very proper English bloke, but he could be very not nasty, but he knew how to get to you to make sure that next time you checked your stuff before you checked it in.
He's an intimidating guy.
Yeah.
In my interview, I thought he hated me, but it was just because he was so quiet and proper. I'm not making any impression on this guy.
Yeah, he's a tough nut to
staring.
crack.
Yeah. So if you've heard much about like Joel Jewett or seen like the stories about Joel Jewett, Mick is the complete opposite. Like very low key, very like business and
Professional.
very professional. And
But
so
the three of the three founders of Neversoft, they wanted to build a company that was going to, everybody that worked there had this philosophy of like working hard, and so that kind of just built this foundation, and we just kind of all worked together to make this, luckily, amazing series.
Yeah, I kind of there were times where I found it like a kind of a sports team, although we didn't make nearly the money of a sports team, but when the game was on, everybody was on. Like you were there, people didn't take vacations. They didn't call, like I would literally have to go to people and tell them to go home when they were sick, because we didn't want other people to get sick. And people slept at the office. There were plenty of nights where people would just sleep under their desk. It was a completely different world. And I think part of it, like one of the big differences at Neversoft versus any other, even mid-sized company, is we didn't have an HR department. So we had nobody to really keep us in line. And so there's a lot of stuff that we did in the office and around the office that, you'd definitely get fired for today.
It was a frat house kind of.
Yeah. There was nothing over the top except for maybe throwing TVs off of the building and stuff.
But that went in the game.
Yeah, that went in the game. It was all content. We were making content. So that's what we were doing. It was all for the game. So, but that goes a long way when you have the ability to have this tight group of people that that are also friends, that we're hanging out. We had a 30th anniversary party Joel threw for Neversoft, and I don't know how many of you know anybody or yourself that after 30 years, I haven't worked at Neversoft for 20-something years, that you're going to go back to a company party. And it was packed. It was literally packed of all of the OGs and all of the people from Tony Hawk team, the Spider-Man teams, the gun teams. So that kind of gives you an idea of what the company was like. It was different than any other company that I've worked for sure. And I've worked for bigger, smaller, whatever. But there was this camaraderie that would bring people. People flew in from other places in the country to come and see this 30th party, and it was just like the old Neversoft, except for there were a lot of people outside because the music was too loud. Showing our age a little bit.
I think maybe we could delve a little bit more into some of these limited tools that we had, like Rausch. What was some of the things you had to deal with, some of your designing and the limited, obviously because you were talking about the PC and what were some of your challenges of things that you had to build to get to work?
Well, I mean, we could talk about design and
Yeah.
art
Yeah.
even in that regard, level art and level
Yeah.
design, right? Because, you know, the first couple of titles, we did everything from kind of meetings and our imagination, and a designer would have his idea of how he wanted the levels to flow and build geometry, and then we try to flesh it out and make it look more like a real world over time. And we didn't have really good access to reference material for it because the internet was not what it is today. So we had a lot of skater mags and videos that we would go through to get
Lots of
ideas of
411 videos we were
yeah,
always
a lot of
watching.
411 videos to look at spots that the local skaters at the time were really into, and then we try to integrate that stuff. And again, that's just something that today you could just go on YouTube and in 30 seconds have more than we had for the first 3 games, really.
Yeah, exactly. I walked to Burnside, which is just down the street. It was in the first one, and I've been there for probably 15 years, and just like the difference of what it looks like now, and like how totally different it is than what it looked like in game. The surroundings is like insane, because it's just like it feels so with this, like also you're walking and you see this skate park. Back then it was just like it just stuck out, but now it's just like so huddled in there. So it was just like, and I wasn't worked on that one, but I know Darren did a lot of like just finding, and it wouldn't go anywhere.
Look, I found one magazine article
Yeah.
on Burnside, and the pictures were in a magazine. They were like this big, and I'm sitting there trying to figure out, the eyeball. What is, what's the bowl look like? And to be honest, I've been to Portland now multiple times in my life. I still haven't been to Burnside, and I was the level I was the level artist on the game.
It's like a 10-minute walk.
So
from
I'm going on this trip. Even if I miss my flight, somehow I'm going to go to
Yeah,
Burnside.
if you haven't checked out Burnside and you're in this panel, you really should go
bad.
check
I mean,
out
it's bad. But
Burnside.
at the time,
It's
there was
so
just,
close.
There was
Yeah,
no
it's
way.
It's a short walk away. It's pretty cool to see.
So,
Yeah, I think the design tools, the things that you didn't have a lot of memory and
No.
machine assets to do things. So
No,
there's
there's-
a balance, right?
Yeah,
Juggling.
there's so you're fighting. At the time, PlayStation was the lead platform, and I don't know if you remember PlayStation games. Now on emulators, everything looks fine.
Yeah.
All the lines are straight.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
all the triangles
Polygons.
show up on the screen at all times. They don't drop out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Half the time you would do something like the first level I did when we got there. We laid out all the game mechanics and everything was cool, and we had the first school level was done by a guy named Aaron Camerata. So we kind of had that and the downtown bit from Jason to go around. The first level I did when I got there was going to be the animal chin ramp, like from a Powell video. So at the end of this Bones Brigade video, it's an old 80s skate video, Tony Hawk and all the other guys on the team go out to the desert and they find this double half pipe with a little hidden tunnel in it that you can go through. And I wanted to build that just even as a practice to kind of get down with the game. And building it at the time, half of the edges of everything would disappear, and all of the polygons I was using were too big. So, halfway in front of you, there's nothing, and then everything appears.
So close, yeah.
And over time, kind of iterated and iterated, made it more fun and more fun, and then he threw aliens in it. And it ended up being Roswell instead of that chin ramp at all. We made it later. We made it like for 2 in the skate heaven. But yeah, like half the time it was fighting that hardware. Like certain shapes wouldn't work, and certain everything in our game was curves and straight long lines, and that was like everything that PlayStation didn't do.
Couldn't do.
Yeah.
It was all boxes and triangles, and everything that we were trying to do was against the rule. Like floating point math is not like
In our
any of
rule,
this.
we had a rule of it had to play at 60 FPS, which we kept for years until we switched to the newer Xbox 360. We
Not 30 back then.
went to 30. But we wouldn't ship it if the thing didn't play at a constant 60, which put a lot of limitations on people like
Yeah.
the 3 of us to make everything as small and as light as it could be, but still look like it was an expensive, cool thing. And like Chris is saying, the curves, I mean, we had to have faceted curves, but there were some tricks you could do to make them not look that way as an artist. And you had to use those because, like, I remember the first level that I worked on as a level was Downhill Jam. And so you got this long corridor with these tall, skinny polygons.
Can't hear you.
These tall, skinny polygons, and you would see them just start to just break, like kind of like what he's describing. And so you'd have to go in there and decide, okay, I can subdivide this polygon for this one particular spot because it looks so bad. But
Cut
then
everything up.
you've just doubled your polys in that area. So you're like, okay, I got to be careful because the frame rate's going to go down. And so it was that kind of stuff. Working on the PS1 was limiting, but it also in a way was kind of liberating because you knew what you could get away with, and you had this like frame that you could design for, which I think was good in a way from an art standpoint.
Yeah, that balance, that memory number ticking down in the corner
could see
every
it.
time
Yes.
you would build something
Yeah, that's
new,
me.
or like, oh, I painted this wall, and now half of what I had is gone.
Exactly. Yeah, Mick would have he had these little counters in the corner, so while you're demoing your work, you could see how bad you did, you know. And
you know, I
fix
think
that.
going along with that, the ability to go anywhere in the level, like, you know, you can go anywhere in the level. You know, there are places where you got to, and I would hate going into Rausch. I was like, hey, this texture over here is flickering a little bit. Can you fix that? Because it would be fine when you look at it one way and not the other. So yeah, there were a lot of challenges, and I don't think we didn't really have an in-house QA department. We all QA'd.
We were the QA
Yeah,
team, yeah. And then sometimes it would go to, at the end, it would go to.
Yeah,
we would send it to
Activision
Santa
QA.
Monica before we shipped, and they had their QA that would test it, but we did the bulk of the.
Yeah,
build.
the last two projects, Wasteland and Project 8, I think we had
We had a full team.
internal
We did.
QA,
Yeah.
internal, which was super helpful to have. You know, QA, I don't think they get enough respect and kudos
Yeah.
because they you know, without them, you ship games that are just ugly and dirty. We also had an external QA called. There was a group called B-Goat. And B-Goat was best glitches of all time, and they would literally just get online and try to find glitches in our game, and then they'd be proud. I found that I own this one. I got this. And it was kind of, you know, at first we were thinking, oh, this kind of sucks. They're just showing all the ugliness. But it's like, it's kind of cool. We're finding all the stuff we need to fix.
Yeah.
You know, so they're outside QA team. You know, because back in the day, you burned a disk. You know, you had a limited amount of memory that you had on that disk, or space on that disk. And even when we moved from CD to DVD, everyone was always like, oh, we have so much room, we're never gonna, and it filled up. It was
Especially
just,
when
As
Greatest
soon as you got
Skater.
it. Oh, yeah.
Greatest Skater took a lot of that memory.
what was that?
Greatest
Greatest
Skater.
Skater.
took a lot
But then
of
the
that
soundtrack, I mean,
Yeah, and
the
the
soundtrack,
soundtrack,
that
yeah.
was, you know, we got into, 80 tracks in
Yeah.
a
And
game.
And
and-
you improve the fidelity of the song.
And
Yeah.
the one funny thing about the early days of the soundtrack is it would on PlayStation 1 we would have skipping issues. So and we had video walls too, and they would skip. And again, Mick West figured out a way to he pushed all the music to the outside of the CD because that spins faster. And so you didn't have you had better streaming with the music actually being pushed out onto the. So he physically was arranging where the data was being burned onto the CD, and we thought, oh, well, we'll have no problem once we go to DVD. And it was, you know, by the end of the project, or not even close to the end of the project, we were figuring, how can we cut this down? How could we
Yeah.
cut some polys out?
As soon as you got it more, we took it all up.
Took it all up.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of an instant. If we got any new platform, and you know, it always seemed like we'll be fine, but at the end we were always right at the limit.
Yeah, every single time.
And it was terrible for the guys that made the Nintendo port, which we didn't do at
We didn't do those
Neversoft.
in-house. Yeah.
But the Nintendo port of Tony Hawk 1, I think the music was like, I think it was like 15-second loops, which maybe 30. They're short loops because they couldn't
Get the whole track.
whole track on a cartridge. It was, so, yeah, that was a big thing that nowadays, you know, you don't really have to worry about. You can really update games online at
After
patch,
the fact,
whatever,
yeah,
whenever,
patches.
however. For us, you had to burn it on a CD, and if something was wrong with it, the fix was removing all the CDs or all the DVDs from the shelves, pulling them all and reburning it, which is a nightmare. And there were games that happened to. There was a Tiger Woods game that it happened to. They left an episode of, or a skit from the, what was it? It was South Park. Yeah, South Park skit. Yeah, that got pulled. There was the GTA hot coffee thing.
The hot coffee mod.
Yeah, that was the big that, and that was the other thing. Like before any of that, before that whole GTA hot coffee thing, ESRB was not like nobody cared. Like you could do whatever. It was pretty wide open. But after that, things got really clamped down to the point that, some hip hop tracks it would be more edits than the actual track.
Okay, yeah, the word. Yeah,
So as we progressed, legal, and I think we just became a higher target because there was so much money coming in from this series. So, and there were you got to think this is a time where Activision went bankrupt after the Atari days in the '80s. They didn't do much for a while. Then they came back, and they were on the ropes again. I mean, they were really on the ropes and could have easily gone into BK again. And then the Tony Hawk series came out, and it kind of kept them going and launched a lot of other titles and got them into the World of Warcraft and Call of Duty and all of this stuff. But the initial push back then was definitely the Hawk series, the funding that we were able to bring in.
Oh, yeah. And it all timed out. The release of the first game timed out with Tony's 900, which you can never underestimate the power that had to bring our game to the front of everybody's mind at the time.
So I guess we can, we maybe like 5 minutes of pros and cons of back then versus now. Now one thing, now you have more plug and play things, you have tools, you have libraries of 3D objects that you can use for prototyping, and you can do things at a bit faster pace. Not to mention if you want to dabble in AI, it's up to you. But before, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this, Darren. Before things were it was more handcrafted. Like it was more of a, it just seemed like you were starting stuff from the basic, building blocks and learning all of the basics versus having something that's already done that you can start off with.
Yeah, well, that's true. Again, it's true for probably anybody that was putting stuff in the game that was going to be seen, is that in those early games, everything was pretty much handmade. Like in my case, doing level art, I can't even tell you how many types of concrete and brick and fire hydrant textures I made in my life.
Or how many times somebody looked at you weird while you were outside taking
Taking
pictures
photos.
of the
Security
ground,
guards, the number of
trash
security
cans.
guards that have looked at us and said, well, can I help you, sir? No, I'm doing fine by myself. I don't need
Pictures
any
of the
help.
gutter, what's wrong with you?
It was always going to be we're some kind of bomb threat or something, we were casing the joint, but we didn't look like that in any way. I mean, we were a bunch of, computer nerd guys out taking pictures. But
Those are the worst kind.
those are the most dangerous because they're so quiet, But yeah, so I would take a brick texture and I would have to make it 128 by 128 pixels in a lot of cases, and then make it loop into the end of time and not look too bad of a pattern when you see it in the distance. And we didn't have layers that you could put on top of stuff, so you had to make your textures a little bit generic so that they didn't have one little thing that would repeat a million times, So it was kind of an art to the simplicity of making it rather than getting complex textures. Now later on, once we went up to the 360, we had shaders. We could make layers where we would have a different tiling pattern for dirt maps versus the actual underlying brick pattern, so you would never see this repetition thing. But for me as a level artist, the repetition of defects or details was like a huge thing to avoid, because the world just would look really cheesy when you would. And there were a lot of other games where they obviously didn't care, because there were some games at the time where you would just see these repeating weirdnesses, and for me as like kind of like a perfectionist, it would drive me crazy. So you had to be creative with how to do it. You would change your coordinates for one object that's using the same texture so that you would just get rid of that loopiness of it. I could get really geeky talking about that kind of stuff, but the bottom line is, everything was handmade. Every pixel was painted by one of us. Even when we took the shots, off the street, like the first reference material I took was done with a film camera when we were doing the LA level in Tony Hawk 3.
Yeah.
And I took it to the guy. They developed my film, put it on a disc. Then I had that on my computer, and I could start extracting textures from that. And so 3 was the first time we actually even used photo reference. Everything else was all hand painted like the old days.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I bought the first digital camera at Neversoft. It was like a 1 megapixel camera.
They were bigger than that, but not much.
Two.
They
Not
were so
much.
slow. I mean,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
got these little Olympus C3030 zooms,
Yeah.
and you take a picture, and this little orange thing would blink
Yeah.
to tell you don't take another one yet. you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
then you
yeah.
take another one.
Yeah, because I was in charge of taking a lot of pictures of the skaters, and I'd sit there, I'm like, all right, we got these cool new digital cameras, but it's gonna take a minute, so I'm gonna click once, now rotate, hold on, wait, hold on, all right, now you can rotate around again, and so it was just this like process of just like, keeping their patience, and then,
You took pictures of other people than just skaters, right?
yes. There are other celebrities and stuff. Yeah,
Celebrities.
They're a little bit strange.
Jenna
Yeah,
Jameson?
but kind of what Darren was saying, it's similar stuff with the characters, because character 2, he just had these solid models, just one character, and then when we moved to that, the whole, well, 2 had the Crazy Skater as well, but like once we started moving into that, we had to again, look for those, okay, how can we make sure the textures are of this specific face of this person or their clothing or whatever. We had to really be meticulous on what contrast pops out, so that I was actually just playing Tony Hawk 3, and I was playing Alyssa, and I was like, oh man, her pants are just totally black. How did we figure that out? How does that happen, right? Because there's all these things, and so that was kind of back to that art of hey, we have to try and figure out how to pop these things out with our limitations, and that was that part of that crafting and stuff, which was part of the fun.
Part of what we loved, yeah.
Yeah, part of what we loved, yeah.
It was so tedious, but at the same time, because we were all so stoked to make this the best game in the world, that was all of us wanted it to be the best game ever made, Not that we thought it could be necessarily, but that was always our desire. We want to make the best game ever. And so you would put up with those hours
Yeah.
of doing this meticulous stuff.
Yeah, and
Working on pants.
yeah.
Pants, exactly.
Yeah, and I think it was sort of like we did it kind of guerrilla style, where even though Darren is an artist and I was a producer, he and I built the sound booth that we used. So we just, if we needed to get something done, we just figured it out and got it done. It wasn't like we had another department that we could call and get us a sound booth or whatever. You just kind of took it on yourself to take responsibility and do, even though you're the artist, you're doing this stuff, you're making a fun box for Rodney to skate, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, it was sort of everybody just wore a lot of different hats, and you could always depend on anybody else on the team for help, and
100%.
they would always kind of be there for you, which I think that also is one of the major reasons why after 30 years the company's not even there, people haven't been working there for 20 years, they go back to a company and a reunion basically when you have that kind of situation.
But I think, sorry,
ahead, no,
because I just want to extend that. But I think what's kind of cool with the industry now is because everybody's got all these tools now. We're kind of there's just smaller teams wearing all those hats now, and so there's just this awesome creativity that's coming out of all these games. And that's what just walking around this awesome convention and seeing all the iterations of all these games that were made back when and are currently making, the progress that we've made, as well as just you can build awesome games with lots of people, and you can build awesome games with a limited amount of people, and you just have to wear those different hats, and that's kind of what's really, really cool.
And there are also a lot of nice, free tools like Cheapskate, the game that we're making. We're using Godot. We're using all free tools to create that game, and it's just John and myself. John is obviously he's also a genius programmer, designer, everything. But 2 people making a video game that's on Steam, that's kind of what I've wanted to. I love the small team. I think we're at our best when we're under 20 or so. It was such a tight core team.
So we had ice cream parties for your birthday. So anytime somebody's birthday came around, there was an ice cream party.
Ice cream cake, and you got
early. That was fine, and then after the team got to 70, 80, 100 people, it's an ice cream cake every day.
Every day was and their birthday song.
Yeah, I second what Ralph says about the small team. For me, the small team of people that are really at the top of their game and are willing to work outside their comfort zone is just an awesome experience. And if everybody's got the passion that we all did, there's times when you're going to debate what goes in. That's when the best stuff happens, in my opinion, is when you have to think, okay, well, why does he like it so much? Oh, I get it, And so we got this situation the first couple games where we had 13 in the first one and maybe, 16 in the second one or something.
26.
Oh, it was more.
Yes,
It really got big, double. So, but anyway, that few number of people, everybody has talked to everybody during the week. There's not a situation where I haven't seen that guy in a month. And by the end, when I was brought back, I had not worked on the skate game since Thug, Underground. When I was working on the Proving Ground, it was just like, oh my God, I don't even know that guy. He's been working here for 4 years. I've never even seen that guy.
Yeah, I mean, we literally would
That
have.
was me, Darren.
You were there? I didn't know you were in the
We would literally have lunch together at the conference table watching skate videos.
Yeah.
Pretty much that or Family Guy.
That first couple of years was just
It's
awesome.
one of those, yeah.
So we got like 10 minutes. Should we open up to the floor?
Yeah, yeah. One thing I will say, just real quick, and
Yeah.
Nolan brought this up when we were talking yesterday together, is the one thing that we also did have is when you got home, you were home. You were disconnected.
Yes.
Like you didn't get an email on the weekend. You didn't have stuff that you couldn't work on anything because you didn't have.
No one was texting you.
No one was texting you anything. No one was, you were
Slacking
not
and
expected to be, whatever. On the weekend when you were home, which I think is a big difference nowadays because it almost seems like that doesn't exist. You're constantly inundated with texts and emails, and even if it's meant for you to wait till Monday, for me, when I get something, I can't. I'm going to go and do it whenever. So that was a big difference between then and now is when we, and Neversoft, when we weren't working hard, we were partying hard. I mean, we were.
Yeah, it was work hard, play
Yeah,
hard
we were
was the
either at
mantra.
at bars or at the skate parks or whatever, hanging out together, and it was a kind of a nice thing to just be able to disconnect for that time. I recommend it. So,
Yeah.
And that being said, let's open up questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, like before your guys' game, it seemed like, to me, it felt like Cool Borders 2 was like the peak of action. And I remember just being blown away playing the demo of your game for how smooth going on a half pipe felt. And because it was something that I even like knew as like a nerdy kid. I was like, there's no way the PlayStation can do that. It's going to be blocky and jagged and it's not going to feel right. And so I'm wondering, like, how long in development did it take before you got to what like the finished product was, where it actually felt smooth and fun and didn't feel like just a jagged mess?
So, Neversoft had a demo. Before I actually joined the company, I went to talk to them about what they were doing. And the first thing that they did was they had a game called Apocalypse running in their engine. It was Bruce Willis running around with a gun. And one of the other designers, a guy named Jason Wada, showed me how quickly he could pull some vertices out of the ground and make a really rudimentary, like, four-face half pipe, very, very jagged. And he said Mick had been thinking about ways to analyze, like, the angles that you were going to hit, and he would interpolate between them to make a smooth curve. So in the game, you're not always fixated to that, and between that and the camera that he developed, it made it feel smooth. So he had already started thinking about that because Bruce, this is even before all the stories about Bruce on a skateboard being demoed for Tony and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Bruce was still on his feet, so he just locked him so that he was kind of T-posed and started sliding him around and went like, look, we can go up here and come down. So like Mick had already been thinking about a bunch of that stuff specifically because he knew all of this stuff was going to be curves. And if you just kind of jolted around on every angle.
And that camera,
it would've been
that
awful.
camera was a huge thing. The
Yeah,
way you
absolutely.
ran that camera.
Mhm.
Yeah. And keeping the camera out of geometry.
And that that actually, if you look directly at something like Cool Borders, like I was a big fan of 1080, right?
Oh,
And that was maybe a little bit after that. When I worked at Virgin prior to Neversoft, Cool Borders actually came in, and one of the producers was trying to get Virgin to publish it before Sony picked it up. It was from a Japanese team.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the difference between that and something like 1080, where you're like, this is really fun. Cool Borders has this kind of this core, this spirit, but like, man, 1080 really nailed like the polish.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we were doing in the same sense. So the difference between us and them is just that one added layer of like feel, and Mick really knew how. You could tell him anything. As a designer, I wasn't going to go in there and program anything. But if I told him I wanted something to feel like this, and then he'd call me in like the next day and go, how does that feel? Like, you nailed it. Thanks, dude. It's nice to have a super genius around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry,
Oh, I just had like a joke follow-up. When it was in beta, was it referred to as Tony Hawk's Amateur Skater?
Oh, boy. That's a goodie.
No. Go ahead.
What are some of your guys' favorite stories or memories with Tony?
That's a long list.
I think, anytime there was that time where we went to the skate park with him and he did that air over Jeremy.
Over Jeremy.
Yeah, that's the
yes,
best. That
yes.
is
There was another producer, Jeremy Anderson, good friend. We're all good friends, whatever. So he skated vert. He was pretty good. And at one of the skate outings that we invited Tony to, he asked Tony if he would air over him, and Tony did. So it was kind of cool, kind of amazing.
Once in a lifetime
Yeah.
for Jeremy.
And it was nice. It was a nice pick-me-up because about 20 minutes before that, one of the other designers had blown his knee out and had to get
yes.
hauled away into the hospital.
Yes, Junkie, right?
Yeah.
Dude, that was yeah.
Blooper video?
Oh, the blooper video has a few of them.
Yeah.
Camarada,
There's
QA
Aaron
QA guy with
Camarada's,
the teeth.
the guy
crash
that
and
dude that
burn.
put his teeth in the ramp.
Oh.
You can see
Go ahead.
it.
Yeah.
You got it.
First of all, for those of you who worked on the soundtrack, thank you for influencing my music taste for the first like 20 years of my life.
Excellent.
Really great stuff. In terms of that licensed soundtrack, were there any artists you were like really, really wanted to get on there, but you just could not?
There was, for me, I'd always wanted to get a BC Boy song in, and we couldn't for the longest time. And then I think eventually we did.
We got Sabotage, yeah.
Yeah, we got Sabotage.
As a
and-
personal favorite of Tony. That was the only
Yeah,
reason they did it.
that was one that was, and we'd wanted to get NWA tracks, but Eazy-E's estate had like 1,000 people that you'd have to go through to get. So but I think we eventually got that too.
Gotta
Yeah.
express yourself, yeah.
And so just so you know, Chris Rausch was pretty much responsible for all of the punk rock, a lot of the punk rock. He's responsible for the Superman from Goldfinger. He kind of brought that in. Nolan, if any tracks that had screaming and yelling and death metal, Speed Dealer, any
Metal
of that,
all the way.
That's Nolan.
So my bands were never
Yeah,
hard to
and
get in the
I
game.
did eclectic stuff, reggae, punk, all kinds
I
of
always
rock.
felt like there was like, 3 or 4 people who evenly got a chunk of the soundtrack they got to do because it was so eclectic, but
Yeah.
divisible in such a clear way.
Yeah,
So
there's
helped.
another guy, Aaron Skillman. He was our hip hop guy. He brought all the hip hop, all the new stuff, and then Joel used like Kiss, rock and roll, AC/DC, and
We always had one track that we had to get in for sure.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a question.
We got
Yeah,
a
go
couple
ahead.
guys still.
Go ahead.
If
Yeah.
money, time, and resources weren't an issue, is there any like concepts, ideas, anything that got cut that you really wish you could have implemented? Whether it's either
Every single one of my levels was 5 times the size it is when we started.
Yeah, we had
And I got
everybody-
yelled at a lot. But
Yeah, well, we would have to cut stuff every time. So every one of us gave up something every time.
Yeah.
So it's more was like just a condition of making these games in a year, 9 months, was that you always left stuff that you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So if we would have had 2-year cycles, the games, I think they would have been better. But at the same time, they wouldn't have had maybe that energy that they had from being done so quickly.
And most of the stuff that got cut, except for Rausch's gigantic levels, they made the punch list basically for the next game. It
Yeah,
started.
that's true.
It
We
was
would
like
start
the
over
punch
with
list of
those.
that. Like
we
I
were
mean,
talking
for
about
instance-
manuals in
yeah.
the first game, and we just hadn't figured out how to get them in yet.
Yeah, it was going to
So
take
pushed
too
it.
long to figure out like all the collision with manuals and stuff. So it's like, okay, we'll move it to the next game, and then we added Rodney, which then was fantastic, blend. So yeah.
Right there in
Go ahead.
with the
Yeah.
wrist.
So I guess it's a two-part question. When creating the game, did you expect that you would create not only a lot of skaters, but also a lot of musicians when you added that soundtrack to it?
Honestly, like the soundtrack was just kind of a nod to what we were listening to as skaters. It was kind of the soundtrack for skateboarding at the time. But no, of course not. Like we just wanted to make something cool that
Stuff we were
skaters
into.
would think was cool, right? Because
Yeah.
even back then it was a tough crowd, right? Skating is way more like inclusive and inviting now than it ever has been. There weren't skate parks on every
I don't
corner.
get beat up anymore for being a skater.
Yeah, so it wasn't like Darren was talking about how we wanted to make the greatest game ever, but that was just a personal goal. Like we just
Right.
wanted to make this thing that we could be super proud of.
Yeah.
But no, not until that demo came out. I remember somebody had analytics or something on, they used to do polls, not actually analytics built into the software or anything, but like they would do polls. And one of the polls came back from Sony on, I think, their Jam Pack, and it was the one that had like, I don't remember if it was like
Final
Crash
Fantasy?
or the Final Fantasy
I
one.
think it's Final
And
Fantasy.
then everyone was playing, according to this poll, everyone was playing the Tony Hawk demo and like getting the magazine or getting the Jam Pack or whatever for that demo. And so they started telling Activision like, hey, you have something here. And so at that point, we kind of started realizing, you know, we can make something out of this. And it did. We were taking the game to skate parks where there was just a bunch of kids. We would wheel up a TV and let them have at
Yeah.
it and just get opinions.
Back
Joel
pickup
took
truck.
one out there and
Joel
dumped the TV over. He may or may not have been sober.
I could actually go to an elementary school and put up a thing. You want to be a game tester? Pull this
Yeah,
out.
the pull tab paper
Yeah.
at the local shop. Like if you want to come try something new,
Yeah.
grab it.
But just
I
we
would
could just
call.
kind of go back to the the skater and music influence. We had no idea, like, to this day, it just amazes me every time that how much influence people like just took up skateboarding or even like
Yeah.
took up music and all that. It just like blows my mind.
we're
The
Yeah.
we're
influence
definitely
that
humbled
it's
by
had
that.
with that. It's so humbling.
Yeah, I don't think a week or so go by that somebody doesn't say, and my wife works as an elementary school teacher, and the parents are now, they're all stoked. They're like, oh my gosh, I played that game. And she's, of course, my soundboard. So, yeah, it's crazy that it did that. We didn't plan it. It's just how it happened. So, we're getting the hook.
Oh,
We're getting the hook.
yeah. Well, we can, if someone has a question
Sure, yeah.
still that they want to
Yeah,
answer,
we'll be
then
out.
we'll
And
mill around.
If at the
if
exit,
anybody wants to
grab
talk.
one of these cheapskate postcards. They've got a Steam key on it, so you can get a free download of it.
And I've got a few, I don't have enough for everybody, but I got some Tony Hawk Pro Skater stickers. They're like 25 years old if someone wants.
And I've got some vintage
But I don't have enough for
Neversoft.
everybody, so.
So this kind of first come, first serve on these stickers.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and here are a few more videos for you to check out.